Okay, let's dig into something pretty complex today. Money in U.S. politics. Our source material really highlights this core tension. Money is, well, essential for democracy to even work, right? Campaigns, getting ideas out there. But at the same time, the sheer amount of it now feels like, I don't know, a real threat to fairness, to the whole one person, one vote idea.
Exactly. And what we want to do here is quickly trace how we got here. Legally speaking, there are some key court rulings, Supreme Court rulings, that shaped this whole environment. And then we need to look at the actual mechanism. How does this money really exert influence today? Because it boils down to this fundamental clash, political equality versus the idea that spending money is protected speech under the First Amendment.
Right. So to figure out why there aren't really caps on a lot of this spending, we need to go back to the courts. You mentioned a key starting point, 1976, I think.
Yeah. That's Buckley v. Vallejo. That's the big one that sets the stage. The court basically split things in two. They said, okay, you can limit how much someone contributes directly to a candidate. That's to prevent outright bribery, quid pro quo corruption. But, and this is the crucial part, they ruled that spending money, especially by groups not coordinating with the campaign, what they called independent expenditures, that's political speech. And you generally can't limit speech. The court argued this kind of independent spending didn't really pose a risk of corruption.
Okay, so contributions can be limited, but independent spending generally can't. That distinction seems, well, really important for what happened later. Which brings us to 2010 and Citizens United. That felt like a bombshell.
It absolutely was. Citizens United built directly on that Buckley foundation. Essentially wiped away restrictions on corporations and unions making those independent political expenditures. So that's where you see the explosion of super PACs. Suddenly, these outside groups could raise and spend unlimited amounts of money as long as they didn't directly coordinate with the campaigns. And it also really paved the way for more dark money spending where you often don't even know who originally provided the funds.
And when you connect those rulings to what's actually happening, the numbers are pretty stark. It's like a financial arms race. We looked at some data. The average cost for a winning House candidate back in 1990 was, what, around $400,000?
Something like that, yeah.
By 2022, it was almost $2.8 million. That's a huge jump. And think about where that money comes from. One source pointed out that in the 2016 presidential race, just under 400 wealthy families accounted for nearly half of the publicly declared funding.
Right. And this is where we need to maybe refine how we think about influence. It's often less about a direct, here's a bag of cash for your vote kind of corruption. The real value, the return on investment for a lot of the spending is access.
Access, meaning
getting your phone calls returned, getting meetings with officials, with their staff, especially early in the process when legislation is being drafted or regulations are being written. Campaign donations and lobbying are they're deeply intertwined. That campaign money basically buys you a guaranteed hearing. It ensures the people you hire as lobbyists can get in the room to shape the agenda, shape the details of policy.
So it's not necessarily vote buying, but it's buying influence over the process itself.
Exactly. And there's data suggesting this pays off. Some studies show, for instance, a correlation where like a 1% increase in a company's lobbying spending might link up with, say, a 0.5% to maybe 1.6% drop in their effective tax rate the next year. It's about shaping the rules of the game.
But wait, if that kind of spending leads to measurable policy outcomes like lower taxes, how does that square with the original Buckley idea? The idea that independent spending doesn't carry a corruption risk. It seems like getting policy tilted in your favor is a form of return.
Well, that's the central tension, isn't it? The legal definition of corruption used by the court is very narrow, basically, direct bribery. But the practical reality, the ability to buy privileged access and shape policy outcomes, feels like influence to most people. And, it's a major reason why public trust in government is so low. People perceive, probably correctly, that big money talks louder.
So if you're listening and thinking, okay, this sounds problematic, what's the path forward? What about reforms?
People talk about different ideas, things like public financing systems, like democracy vouchers or matching funds for small donations. There are efforts, ongoing efforts, to pass a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. But the big hurdle right now is the legal framework itself. It's those Supreme Court rulings. Any legislative attempt to significantly cap spending runs straight into that First Amendment interpretation that money equals speech.
Which leaves us with a really tough question.
It does. If money is speech, and some people, some corporations, can afford a massively powerful megaphone, while others can barely afford a whisper, How can a political system that's supposed to be based on equality actually function fairly? That's the balance, or maybe the imbalance we're wrestling with. Financial freedom versus democratic parity. Something for you to think about.